Well, I've been preparing this week for the sermon on Daniel 2, and as I have, I've been thinking about God's plans for his kingdom and wondering, why did God allow his people to be exiled? Why did he allow Daniel, the cream of the crop, to be skimmed off, taken away, and to spend 70 years away, to leave Babylon with just the poorest, and to leave it desecrated, really? All the goods from the temple taken, and it was burnt to the ground. The walls were knocked down, left dilapidated. If God wanted to glorify his name amongst the nations, why didn't he keep his people faithful? Why didn't he keep them in the land? Why didn't he prosper them there so that he could increase in number and strength and wealth and have dominance over the nations and become the great empire? But then I thought, well, if I have that mentality, Paul, now I can understand what it feels like to be a Jew. To think, well, God, didn't you make these promises to your people? Didn't you say when you started with that elderly couple, Abraham and Sarah, that they were going to have descendants like the sand on the seashore and the stars in the sky? And yet, if we look at the history of the Old Testament and the history of the church since Jesus, we can go back to, well, let's go back to Jacob and his family. Joseph gets carried off, doesn't he? And ends up taking the family, 70 of God's people, into Egypt. There they stay for 400 years as slaves. Yes, they come out. God shows his power, doesn't he, again? And he brings his people out and promises them a land, and they think, yes, this is it. This is where we're going to prosper. And about 2 million probably come out of Egypt, and there they settle and think, right, now we're going to get dominance. But the nations invade, the judges are raised up, and then we think of Gideon and his mighty men, and yet God says, no, not the thousands. We're going to defeat them with 300. What is God doing? Time and time again, he's showing, just when you think my people are weak, just when you think you've got the upper hand, I'm going to show my supreme power, my power, not the power of my people, not their dominance, not their military strength, my power. And then even David, the mighty king, constantly writes psalms saying, Lord, where are you? Where are you? What are you doing? My enemies are surrounding me. God's people always oppressed, always under attack. And then comes the divided kingdom. They're weakened because they're not united. And then the Assyrians come and invade the north and take them off. And then it's time for the south and the Babylonian exile, as we're looking at now. And the walls are knocked down. The city's invaded. The temple is ransacked. All those sacred items taken off to Babylon. The temple burnt. And the cream of the crop, like Daniel, taken away. Where is God? Yes, the people go back after 70 years. Yes, they begin to rebuild under Nehemiah and Ezra. But it was never the same. Then 400 years of silence in the Bible where we hear nothing. But then comes the Roman Empire and God's people are invaded and dominated again. And the Jews are longing for the Messiah. And then comes the Christ. Yes, he's here. Now's our chance for dominance. Now we're going to get the wealth and the power and the military strength. And we're going to be the next empire. God's kingdom is going to grow. That is, until this self-acclaimed Messiah says, I'm going to die. And he does die. And not just death, a shameful death at the hands of the Romans. He's crucified. What's happened to God's kingdom? Well, I'm reminded again of words from 1 Corinthians, where Paul says that the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing. Because the world looks for worldly wisdom. The world looks for worldly power. But Since in the wisdom of God, the world through its wisdom did not know him, God was pleased through the foolishness of what was preached to save those who believe. The cross is the power of God. And it's through Jesus that he's building his kingdom. He is building his kingdom behind the scenes and through weakness, suffering, oppression, and seemingly world dominance over his people. But he is building his kingdom. He is gathering people from around the world. And one day when the Lord Jesus returns, we will see his people like the numbers of grains of sand on the seashore and the stars in the sky. But until that time, Paul says, he chooses the weak things of the world and the foolish things of the world, like you and I. Why? To shame the strong and the wise, to say it's not about wise and strong people. That's not how I build my kingdom. And my kingdom's not earthly. My kingdom is spiritual. My kingdom is heavenly. One day my kingdom will be very earthly. But until that time, I choose the weak so that the one who boasts might only boast not in themselves, but boast in the Lord. Boasting in the Lord Jesus Christ, who came into this troubled, broken world, who became weak for us, who went to the foolishness of the cross for us, that we might become part of his eternal kingdom. So we hold on to the fact that our hope is not here and now in an earthly kingdom and power and wealth and prosperity and dominance. Our hope is in Jesus, and our hope is in his future. No, it's his kingdom now, isn't it? But it's now and not yet. We look forward to our real home, the fullness of his kingdom, when Jesus returns. So folks, when you feel weak and when God's kingdom seems weak and oppressed, hold on. Keep looking to Jesus. Keep looking to eternity. Keep looking to the power of God.